A common problem that I'll see with people, and I made this mistake myself, is confusing general weight loss with recompositioning your body. Now, technically, recompositioning your body could be any kind of change that you make to your body, but I'm using recompositioning to help you have an idea of the difference between weight loss and actually building a strong, lean, toned, athletic physique and what some may call their dream or ideal physique. Now, the reason why I want to be very specific with that terminology is because you can't use a general weight loss approach or an over restriction approach and then expect to pop out with your dream physique or have that physique that you're looking for. That requires a lot more detail than just saying, oh, I'm going to eat less and then hopefully I look a certain way. What that does do, though, is lead to burnout because you will be trying really hard to eat less, to restrict, to do all these things, and you won't get the results that you're looking for. And then that will lead for you to feel burnt out because at the end of the day, burnout is just a lot of effort and it doesn't equate the result that you think you should be getting. And if you aren't getting the result and you're feeling burnt out, it's most likely because there's a fundamental misunderstanding on what you think you're actually doing or what you think is going on or how you think this works. So I'm going to break it down for you in this video so you can avoid the mistakes that I made and that I see most people make because I talk to them and I coach them every single day. So let's go ahead and just break it all down so that you can body recomposition yourself. Now, this is the exact thing that I do for my clients. So take what I do in this video, take notes, and then you can literally implement this for yourself to be able to get the results. So this is eating for body recomposition. Now, this only works when paired with strength training and cardio. Now, cardio can be you on the treadmill, can be you on the Stairmaster, dedicated cardio time, or can be you increasing your activity through a step goal throughout the day. Again, it has a lot to do with your lifestyle, your preference, and your schedule. So when we talk about nutrition, there's a few key things here that I'm going to go over that really come into play when optimizing your food plan to make sure that you get the physique that you want so that you're not just like, oh, I'm eating less, I'm going to get results. That's not ever how it's going to work. So when it comes to food, the first thing that I want you to look at is your total caloric intake. Now, this can still be applied for a general fat loss or weight loss approach. But when it comes to that total caloric intake, you're going to want to put yourself into a caloric deficit. So there are plenty of ways online that you can go and find your estimated maintenance. Now remember, it is an estimate, so take it with a grain of salt. And I want you to put yourself in a calorie deficit from that estimated maintenance. Now, if you got a lot of fat to lose, I would recommend anywhere between a 400 to 500 calorie deficit. I don't recommend much steeper because at the end of the day, in this video, I don't want you to fall in the cycle of over restriction. So 500 is where I would draw the line. If you are recompositioning or you're not overweight or you don't have as much fat to lose, you can get away with maybe a 250 to 350 calorie deficit. In all honesty, it does rely heavily on where you're currently at, but at the end of the day, you need to put yourself in a caloric deficit. Now, once you've put yourself in that deficit, you have two options. Now, the first option is what we do when we're body recompositioning. The second option still can be done with body recompositioning so long as the nutrients are the correct ratios, but the first one is going to be better, however, more complicated. So the first option is a variable deficit, and I utilize this to carb cycle my clients as well as myself. Now, essentially with the variable deficit, on training days, food will be higher. You are training. On rest days, food will be lower. And what we cut out to lower the calorie intake is carbs. Now, we implement more carbs on training days to give us the energy source to provide the proper stimulus to promote muscle growth. Now, on rest days, we don't necessarily need those carbs because we're not training. And when we're doing things like regular daily tasks, our body primarily utilizes fat sources rather than carbs. Our body utilizes carbs as an energy source when we're training, doing cardio, a little bit of a higher intensity cardio, and things like that. So on your training days, obviously there will be a need to add those in. On your rest days, you won't necessarily need to add those in. Now, like I said, the first option is a little bit more complicated, but it can yield a better result because you're going to be in a steeper caloric deficit when you look at it on a week-to-week basis because you're not always eating the same amount. You're actually lowering it when you're not doing anything. The next option is much more simple. You find that maintenance, you put yourself in the deficit, you structure your nutrients appropriately, and you just eat that every single day. Now, the first option is more optimal, but like I said, the second one is more beginner-friendly. Either way, you will still be on the right track. However, further down the line, I do recommend that you get into that variable deficit if you do start with fixed. So next we'll talk about the macronutrients, and this is what people commonly refer to as macros. Now this is how we take a body recompositioning approach instead of a general weight loss approach. Now with the fixed deficit and the total caloric intake, that's pretty much what people do for their weight loss approach. And you know, here in this video, we're anti that. We're trying to take a body recompositioning approach. So that is why we're going to look at the macronutrients that make up our caloric deficit. So the three main macronutrients are going to be protein, carbs, and fats. All of those have a respective calorie value per 1 gram. Now, That's what we're going to use to be able to make up that caloric number that we've decided to be our deficit. Now, most people, when they look at the deficit, they just stop there and then they eat whatever they want and they only look at calories to fill that deficit, right? So they eat 1,500 calories. They don't look at the macronutrients that make up those calories. So, what we want to do with these macronutrients is structure them in a way that our body is forced to lose fat, but also forced to put on muscle. So, in order to do this, we need to ensure that we're hitting a protein goal every single day because if we do not, we won't build muscle nor retain the muscle that we already have. If you do not pay attention to your protein goal, your body will just be losing weight. That weight will be comprised of both fat and muscle, which is not what we want to do. So when you're planning your protein goal, you want it to be about a gram per pound you weigh. If you weigh a little bit more, you can do your estimated or goal weight, but you probably won't know how much you will weigh. So just do your estimation of what you aim to weigh by the end of your journey or however long you plan to do this for. And so we know that protein is about 4 calories per 1 gram. So that'll take up a good chunk of your deficit. Now, whatever is left over in that deficit, you will utilize carbs and fats. Now, remember, carbs are the main energy source that our body uses to perform in the gym, have the proper energy to be able to provide stimulus for muscle growth, as well as do our cardio and even think properly, right? Our brain utilizes carbs as well. Now, when it comes to filling the rest of your deficit with carbs and fats, I would program majority of the fats towards dinner time and a little bit with your breakfast to give you sustained energy levels. And then I would center most of your carbs pre and post workout. You want majority of your fat and fiber to be around dinner time because those digest a little bit longer and they can tend to make people tired, which is why it's perfect for a pre-bedtime meal. Now, your fat intake should be about 15 to 25% of your total calories within that deficit. If you're a woman, I would recommend 20% or higher. Men can get away with a little bit less, but you don't want to go under that 15% threshold. So, for example, let's say you weighed 150 pounds, you were eating about 2,000 calories a day. You'd want to be doing about 50% carbs, 30% protein, and around 20% fat. Now, again, I'm giving you examples, but this is very nuanced from person to person. One person might not have as much muscle as the other person, meaning their metabolism is a little bit lower, so they might have to take a different approach. But that is just an example of what that caloric pie chart can look like. You want to make sure that you're having a nutrient-dense diet and not one of these macronutrients is lacking because that will affect the composition. If you don't eat enough carbs, you won't have enough energy. If you don't eat enough protein, you won't build and retain muscle. And if you don't take enough fat, you won't be able to have sustained energy, which can lead for you to crash because carbs are quick digesting, or your hormones could suffer. Sometimes when women don't have enough fat, they lose their periods. Other times men become low energy or their test crashes, whatever the case may be. So now that we've kind of discussed the macronutrients and why we need to eat them and how you can kind of structure them percentage wise, remember how we talked about variable and fixed deficits? Now with the variable deficit, you're going to keep protein and fats the same. The only thing that you're going to do for those low days or those rest days are going to be cutting those carbs down because you don't need them. Like I said, you can even increase protein slightly and fat slightly as well because fats digest a little bit longer, so they keep you fuller longer, and protein is the most satiating macronutrient, again, helping you stay fuller because you've cut carbs. And also when it comes to the variable deficit, it doesn't just have to be a low and high day. It can be a low, a medium. You can tier it however you like to help you stay in that deficit or even create a larger deficit so that you're not struggling. Majority of my clients are on the variable deficit. However, some of the beginner ones or the ones that aren't as experienced with the nutrition are on the fixed deficit. I will say the variable deficit has much more benefits because there are days where you get to eat a fuck ton of food because you're training. And then on days where you're resting, you don't eat as much because you're not feeling as hungry. So it actually helps them feel more satiated, gives them something to look forward to when they're training, and also helps them increase that deficit because they're not eating the same amount of food every day. And also, when you remove that from your body when you're not training, your body's more sensitive to that when it's reintroduced on training days, giving you a heightened energy level. All in all, there's relatively no downside to carb cycling, which is why I implement it with every single person. So we've covered caloric intake and we've covered macronutrients. Now let's get into micronutrients. Now, the reason why the next topic is food sources is because where you get your food will help you hit that micronutrient target instead of me listing every single micronutrient you need to hit. When you get majority of what you're eating from whole food sources, inevitably you will be hitting those micronutrient targets. So you want to make sure that about 90% of what you're eating is from those whole food sources. Now, a lot of people see this and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. And it's like, you can make phenomenal dishes and food using whole food sources, and it can actually be quite delicious as well as nutritious. So don't be thinking that just because you're eating whole foods it's going to be some bland, boring diet. I have made some of the best meals of my life utilizing whole food sources. And I'm not saying 100% of your diet has to be from whole food sources. You can still enjoy your favorite things within that 10%. Next up is hydration. In order for all of this to work, for you to manage your hunger cues, for you to have proper energy, for you to avoid the brain fog, and for you to be able to remain on this journey, you need to make sure that you're hydrated. If you feel low energy, if you feel constantly hungry, you're always battling cravings, I promise you it is probably a lack of water. That is why my one-step morning routine is simply chugging 24 ounces of water. It is that important. That is the one step that I do in the morning before I can do absolutely anything else. So if you are lacking in energy, you're feeling brain fog, you're feeling intense cravings, it is most likely due to a lack of water, and I encourage you to adopt the same one-step morning routine that I have. I promise it'll help. I promise it'll make you feel more energized. I promise it'll make you have more energy in the mornings, and it'll overall set you up to have a better day. I can absolutely attest to it. Next is scheduling and timing. Now that is absolutely essential. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned your cardio and your strength training being based solely on preference and lifestyle and how much time you have to allocate to this. If you do not look at that and you try to build this intricate ass plan and you don't actually tailor it to your lifestyle, you will never be able to adhere to it and it'll never stick because it doesn't align with who you are, with what you do, and the way that you live your life. Those two things always have to be congruent or else you will experience so much friction that you will inevitably give up at some point on the journey. So make sure that you fit this into your lifestyle. And if you're sitting here being like, oh, I don't think I can do that, I promise you there's a way because I do this for every single person that I coach. There is a way to fit it in to your work schedule, to your kid's schedule, to your spouse's schedule, to whatever it is that you're doing. I promise you, you just have to have a will to do it. If you sit here and you tell yourself that it's unrealistic for you right now because you have too many responsibilities, because you have so many kids, because you have family stuff, because you have all these things to do, you were never going to transform. Because life's never going to get easier. So stop expecting your responsibilities to conform to what you want to do and force this to conform to that and make sure it blends so that you can always stick to it. Now, when it comes to scheduling and timing specifically for nutrition, make sure that you're planning the meals around when you have time windows to eat. If you only have 3 times to eat in a day, don't sit there and try to tell yourself you're going to have 6 micro meals. Plan 3 meals in the day. If you are training at noon, eat majority of your carbs before your training and after your training. If you typically crash in energy around 2 p.m. and you don't know why, program a meal there so you can give yourself some carbs to think better, perform better, and do better, and pair that with some water. I promise you, energy levels will skyrocket. The last one is preferences and dietary restrictions. Now, everything that I mentioned above is important. However, you need to make sure that it aligns with your preferences. Don't ever program in a meal plan shit that you fucking hate. Don't eat chicken and broccoli. If you despise chicken and broccoli, you can program your favorite meals, your favorite foods, your favorite recipes within everything that I just said. And if you're telling yourself that you can or it's too hard, you're just fucking coping. I promise you it is possible. I do it. My clients do it. I can see it every single day. I know that it fucking works. Don't try to come in here with some excuses that you don't want to give up your favorite things, that it's too hard, it doesn't fit with your schedule, you can't eat the things that you like. That's a fucking lie. That's cope. It's not true. And if you think it's true, you're either doing something wrong or you just don't want to face this shit. So look at your preferences and figure out what your favorite things are and put them in that fucking caloric intake, put them within those macronutrients because it can work. I promise you. Don't label foods as good or bad. Just look at the nutritional value of it. And obviously we want to choose foods that are minimally processed. Now, most foods are processed to some degree, but you know what I mean when I say that. You don't want to use ultra processed foods that are lacking in the micronutrient department. Don't let that fool you into thinking that you can't make a wonderful dessert using whole food ingredients. Don't let that fool you into thinking that you can't make a dinner that tastes absolutely phenomenal using whole food ingredients. Next, we have dietary restrictions. Now, this is very specific to the person, but sometimes in this process, we actually learn that we have dietary restrictions because we're tracking everything and we're able to mark and notice how digestion is and what makes us feel bloated and what doesn't sit well with us or work with our stomach. And when you learn that about yourself and you realize that certain foods maybe make you inflamed or make you bloated or you have a certain intolerance, you can actually avoid those things and help yourself feel better on this journey and get better progress and results in terms of fat loss. So that is the very general approach that I take for body recompositioning my clients when it comes to their nutrition. Remember, none of this bullshit works if you don't have the proper mindset and you don't pair that with strength training and cardio. There would be no point in paying attention to this if you still have a victim ass mindset or you're still in a victim mentality or you're not taking accountability and if you're not going to the gym and pushing yourself and doing some form of cardio. Now let's get into how to actually tell if this is working. So I'm going to show you this thing here. How do we measure progress? Now this is the data interpretation. I'm going to show a few photos here on the screen of people that are the same weight yet look radically different so that you don't get a bad relationship with the scale or you don't develop a hyperfixation on seeing that shit drop. I promise you, the scale isn't the end all be all. It is a tool that we use alongside the 3 other things listed below it. Now with the scale, obviously if you are overweight, the scale will drop. If you don't have that much fat to lose and you're putting on muscle and let's say you're skinny fat, the scale might not necessarily drop as fast as you're thinking. So don't hyperfixate on it and assume that just because it's not dropping, you're not making progress. You want to pair the scale with composition photos. Take photos once a week and look at yourself in the mirror, make sure that it's the same lighting, relatively similar outfit, and compare on a week-to-week basis. Now, it's absolutely essential that you take these photos, and some may argue that it's annoying, but at the end of the day, your brain will convince you that you're not making progress, and you think I'm fucking lying, but every single client I have tells me, thank God we take these photos, because I would have told myself that nothing is working. And every single week, I even have to send them pictures and be like, I know you may not see it, but I see it, this shit's working. Keep up the good fucking work. Next, we have measurements. Sometimes if a client does come to me and I notice that they do have a poor relationship with the scale, I will tell them, don't weigh yourself. We'll just take pictures and you measure your waist and your arm and your thigh. So if you notice yourself hyperfixating on the scale, move over to taking your measurements for a little bit. Now, when it comes to measurements, you want to treat it the same as the scale. You want to do it first thing in the morning when you wake up and you use the restroom. You want your fasted weight. You want your fasted measurements as well, because if you do it at the end of the day, who knows if you're bloated because you just had a very fibrous dinner? Who knows if you're bloated because you just ate the biggest meal of the day or you drank a lot of water, right? You want to make sure that you do the scale and measurements first thing in the morning after you have used the restroom. Lastly, but most importantly, performance. We are not taking a general weight loss approach. We want to build our dream physique. We want to build a lean, athletic, toned physique. That would mean that we would need to go to the gym and train pretty hard, which means that we need to make sure that we are performing better in the gym. If the scale isn't down, but photos are looking better and measurements are looking better and you're performing well in the gym, I promise you it is working. Now, what performance can be measured in is either sets, reps, energy levels, ease of performance when it comes to a certain exercise. So when you're going to the gym, is your strength increasing? So can you do more reps, or maybe you add 5 pounds, or maybe the reps are easier and you're performing them with better form? Do you feel more energized when you do cardio? Is it easier than it was last time? Do you notice it's not as difficult as the first week that you did it? If yes, I promise you are improving. Now, we want to look at all these 4 things together, but we don't want to take one as the end all be all, right? So we don't want to be super obsessed with the scale or photos or measurements. We want to make sure that we utilize all of them to tell us if we're doing the right things. Now, that is everything that I have for you guys today. That is how to eat for body recomposition and to tell if it is working. If you want me to coach you through this, build this out for you, and help you along this journey to build your dream physique, I will leave the application in the description of this video. If you're a good fit and spots are available, I'll personally be reaching out to you. I'll leave my Instagram in the description as well. If you have any questions or anything like that, or need anything from me, message me there and I'll get back to you with a voice message. As of today, it is December 2nd. We have about 4 weeks until 2026. Now is the time to wrap up any remaining goals for 2025 and get momentum to make 2026 your year. You need to start now. Don't save all this work for you to do on January 1st, because I promise you it won't stick and you will get overwhelmed. I love you guys so much. Please don't forget how much I'm rooting for y'all, how much I love y'all, and how much I just want to see you guys win. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank y'all so much for watching.